Let's have a conversation today about the importance of manufactured housing because, my friends, here is the honest truth. Manufactured housing is one of the most overlooked sectors in American real estate today. Yet, it plays a critical and vital role in adequately and actively addressing America's housing shortage. According to the most recent American Housing Survey, there are approximately 7.2 million occupied manufactured homes in the United States, which accounts for 5.4% of all occupied housing across the country. These communities provide affordable housing solutions for millions of Americans, particularly those living in rural America or low-income Americans. In this episode, I sit down with my friend Leo Young. He's the managing partner and founder of Cornell Communities. It's a real estate investment firm which is dedicated to acquiring and operating manufactured homes communities, which mutually generate both financial returns and meaningful social impact. Leo's journey is anything but conventional. Before founding Cornell Communities, he generated more than $50 million in real estate sales, worked on the acquisition team of a $4.5 billion private equity real estate fund, and he also became a top regional salesperson at Tesla. Today, he combines institutional investment expertise, entrepreneurial leadership, and operations experience to helping investors achieve long-term wealth while also expanding access to affordable housing. Young is driven by his mission to positively impact 1 million people through real estate. He's also built a community of both aspiring and active investors of over 30,000 through his investor club and podcast. His practical approach demonstrates how busy professionals can move beyond their reliance strictly on earned income by creating passive income and cash flow through thoughtfully selected real estate investments. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShan. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn all about how you're helping address the housing crisis and the affordability concern with manufactured homes and your entrepreneurial ventures. Great to see you and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And same to you.
Absolutely. Now, Leo, before we dive into Cornell Communities, I'm curious off the top to get your perspective on the affordable housing concern that we currently have across America and how urgent of a need it is to create more affordable housing like manufactured homes. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, it's one of the most underlooked kind of solutions to the affordable housing crisis. I mean, as we know, just the housing prices across the board has been going up uh, a lot. I mean, since COVID, right? I mean, your average home price right now, it's around 420,000, and about 49% of Americans can't afford a home like that. So, what is a solution for them? Do they stay perpetual renters? But, with the manufactured housing space, there's an actual practical way that's not dependent on, government subsidies to make it work. It's just that we have manufactured homes, which are much lower in terms of a price point, and we maintain the community for them, and we give them an opportunity to build wealth in their own home.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as I mentioned, you're the founder of Cornell Communities, my friend, and it works to acquire, manufacture home communities and to build equity in the housing space, my friend. So tell me about Cornell Communities and the difference it's making in the space, my friend.
Yeah. So Cornell Communities, we're a vertically integrated operator of mobile home parks. That's a fancy word. What does that actually mean to you? Is that we partner with investors, they become part owners into these mobile home parks that we buy, and our goal is to revitalize affordable housing for the residents and make money for our investors. So, we have a few call it people to please, and the fun part is figuring out how to just optimize for each person. How do we give strong returns to investors? How do we listen to our residents? How do we give them a better quality of life and also continue the affordable housing? Because the reality is that there's a lot of communities, like you won't really hear this out there, but they're getting knocked down, they're getting redeveloped into higher and better use options. In real estate, we're always talking about what's the highest and best use for a piece of property. And the unfortunate truth is just that the value of mobile home parks, sometimes it outweighs the value of the land. So you're seeing a lot of redevelopment going on, and for us, we want to continue to use the property as a mobile home park. That way, the residents who've been there for a long time, they're not displaced or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And since you've started this endeavor, I know that you've been involved in more than $75 million in real estate transactions, my friend, while also, as you mentioned, balancing the return for your investors. So I'm curious, and I know that social impact is also important to you. So what inspired you, Leo, to get involved into this niche, path in entrepreneurship, and how has your vision for this endeavor evolved over time, my friend?
Yeah, what drew me to the space is initially, well, two things, right? One, there's a compelling kind of business reason to be here. There's money to be made, and it's going to be worth your while because I'm a person that works very hard. I don't really have an upper limit to how hard or how much I can work, and I just want to make sure that each endeavor is a good use of my time. So, mobile home parks, it checks a lot of the boxes. It's a good kind of investment as an asset. But also, to me, I want to make sure that my work has impact as well. Is that the work I do matters to the community? I'm serving people, and I'm doing it well. So the opportunity to provide affordable housing to continue offering that is important to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leo, I know that your career is anything but conventional, my friend. I know you were a regional sales leader at Tesla. You've also been involved rather in millions of dollars in real estate transactions, my friend. And I know that your career arc rather hasn't been anything but normal, my friend. And you were also involved in a real estate fund in a transaction worth more than $4.5 billion, my friend. So tell me about your career arc, my friend, and how you landed where your feet are today. I'm curious to learn about your story, my friend.
Yeah, so how I got here, it was a winding path. It wasn't like a straightforward trajectory. I studied finance in college. Afterwards, I went into sales because it meant I could work at Tesla. Tesla was my dream company. I'm coincidentally wearing a Tesla shirt, but it was such an amazing and pivotal experience for me for my personal development to learn sales. I think looking back. Initially, it was painful. It was everything that I didn't like. I didn't like to be salesy. I wasn't good at it. But learning that experience has proven to be extremely invaluable, and kind of the work ethic that I built working at a company like Tesla has just carried me into great lengths that I am here today. So, at Tesla, I kind of had this realization that I want to build wealth and cash flow that doesn't depend on me to show up every day. And I couldn't do that by working a job. So, I got looking, I found real estate. I thought it was a really novel concept that, hey, you can offer housing, once the tenants pay their rents, you take away expenses, then you have a little bit left over for you. So, I kind of fell into real estate like that, did some more research, started investing, and liked it so much that I got my agent's license to start learning and earning at the same time. So, that was when I kind of took a career pivot. I went full into real estate, was helping people of all shapes and sizes and backgrounds and different transaction types and stuff. And then ended up getting recruited by a private equity fund that focuses on a very, very niche kind of real estate. I kind of learned how institutions view investments, how they look at things, how they analyze opportunities and stuff. So it was a really good experience. And then, ended up starting my own firm here. So, here we are, building out the team. We're focusing on mobile home parks specifically because, as you'll know, operations is really the name of the game. You can spread yourself and cast a wide net, but end of the day, how you get results is to have an unfair advantage. And for us, we choose this one lane to get good at.
Yeah, absolutely. And since you brought it up, how important do you think it is that entrepreneurs really need to hone in on being great at one thing before they look to expand or branch out? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I think it is important. The interesting part about entrepreneurship is that there is no one right path, right? Something that's worked for one person may not work for another, and you really have to. It's a journey of self-discovery, figuring out what brings you joy, what brings you fulfillment, what are you good at, and what does the world value, right? Because that's how you're able to deliver enough value to the world, to the marketplace, that people find it good enough that they want to transact. Because if you just pursue something and people don't pay you for it, then how are you going to pay your bills, right? So I think finding that path and introspecting, seeing like what you're interested in, what you're good at, and building from there, that's the key to success.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leo, I know that you're a first generation immigrant, my friend, and you've had to navigate uncertainty and take risks and build something from the ground up. So I'm curious, how do you believe that background had shaped your approach to business leadership and investing, my friend? And where were the moments where you questioned the journey, whether you personally thought your journey was worth it, my friend? I'm curious to get your answer there.
Yeah. So as an immigrant, I think one of the gifts I was given was I just have this chip on my shoulder to prove myself and to make this kind of endeavor worthwhile because I came into the country, so I want to pursue kind of my own path here and show gratitude to America and to this country of like, hey, you guys really have some great people here. You have a great mindset that's just, not really as prevalent, in the rest of the world. Now we're seeing with the World Cup, it's just like people all around the world, they're coming to experience the American culture instead of like hearing about it on the news. They're like, wow, Americans are pretty great people. So I think having that kind of desire to give back, to contribute to this great country, really motivates me. A second thing is that, I think so. I grew up in Asia. I grew up very frugal, not by choice. Like my parents were just very frugal, and that kind of was a serendipitous gift for me because I learned how to survive on very little. And back then I would just be self-conscious and like not happy and like just generally like upset at my situation. Like, why can't I have the toys? Why can't I go on the trips that people did? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? But now starting the business, I'm like, well, I don't need a lot to sustain myself, so I could take these resources to make my team better, to build up systems and like spend the resource in other ways. So I'd say those two are a couple of key things that I take with me as an immigrant.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, you've had a lot of experience in leadership in sales positions, and I'm wondering, Leo, your thoughts on whether there were common principles or common threads that helped to lead you to the success that you've had, and as a speaker and looking to gain speaking events myself, I always look for repeatable patterns of success. So I'm curious for you, were there any repeatable patterns or principles of success that you've adopted over the years that have led to your success?
There's absolutely a ton of kind of patterns. I think as an entrepreneur, one of your core skills is pattern recognition and opportunity evaluation. So it's just fancy terms to be like, how do you see what's worth you working on? Because your time is very limited, and you want to work on something that's as most worthwhile as you can. Maybe it means having a podcast to share your message with the audience. I mean, your background, Kevin, like, it's super inspiring. Like, how do you get more people to hear about it? How do you help other people be a positive impact to them, right? So that's one thing. And another is that just learning that when you recognize the patterns, then you can act from information. You're not just taking a shot in the dark. Like you know what's going on. For example, in my work is like, hey, if we're seeing a recurring issue come up, a sticking point, like, hey, with our monthly financials, like when we're closing out the books, like, hey, we have to do things a certain way. Well, like, why not make it into a process? Maybe we can automate it with AI or something. That way, we're not putting in that time to do that or remembering to do that, right? I think it's just building that infrastructure as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leo, I also know that you host a podcast called The Journey, where you explore the stories, the mindsets, and strategies of entrepreneurs and operators and investors. So I'm curious, what inspired you to create the show, and what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from your guests and through the podcasting process, my friend, as it relates to connecting with entrepreneurs and people at large? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I am very fortunate to have learned a lot from different successful entrepreneurs and investors and business owners, just through my podcast. And it really comes down to mindset. Mindset is one of those things that early on in my life, I thought mindset was a whole bunch of fooey. It's like, all right, like, think and grow rich. That's so stupid, right? Like, you have to do the things to get there. But then, as I grown and spoke with a lot of successful people, I kind of realized that, hey, like, how do you even put yourself in a position to take the right action? You need to be in the right state and the right mindset. So, Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. He's not like a motivator. Like, you don't need to be motivated to take action or something, but you need to get clear and you need to put your body in a state that is conducive to doing the right actions. Whether, like, for me, it's like maybe cold calling someone, like calling a seller of a property to introduce myself, see if they're willing to entertain an offer, because that's how I bring value to my investors, is like to find good deals at a good price. So, to do that, I think people forget that really mindset plays a huge role in your success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Leo, that you've got a finance degree from the College of New Jersey and completed your commercial real estate certification through Cornell University, my friend. So I'm curious, how has your educational background influenced the way you evaluate opportunities, manage risk, and make investment decisions, my friend?
You know, when it comes to your return on investment, right? When it comes to looking back and seeing which moments in your life had the biggest impact, it's really where you least expected. I mean, I would say, my 4-year undergraduate degree, like I don't use most of it. Like 90% of the stuff I learned, it was like, in one ear, out the other. But I could probably count, like, there's 2 classes that just made the whole experience worth it because it changed the way that I view things. And, when you play on a different level, you're able to get a different value from it. So what I mean is, the 2 classes are the, the the law of business, so like business law. Second is statistics. Statistics was about just not taking numbers at face value. If you see like, oh, 79% of Americans do this or that, like then you get thinking. It's like, well, how did you get that 79% figure? How big is your sample size? Like, are there any inherent biases? Maybe it was this survey, sponsored by the Dental Association of America or something. So like you get to think like, how do you get closer to the truth? How do you like, numbers alone is just a data point. How do you turn that into information? So that was super impactful. Business law, it's not like, you're like being litigious or anything, but just rather, how do you navigate through contracts? Because, America is one of the best kind of groundworks legally in the world. If you have a disagreement with another party, you can have your argument heard in a neutral setting. Like, and for the most part, it's like court or mediation or something. And like, you have to learn to present your case well, because, the people listening to you, like, they do that for a job. You're not their only case for the day. So you have to present it well. You're like, hey, I believe this is the right way because this and that. So those were a couple of very useful things for me, aside from the fact of just learning how to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leo, I'm curious to get your a take on inflation because, as you know, it's impacted everything and every aspect of our economy. And from your perspective, how has inflation changed the way developers and investors approach real estate? Are there opportunities being created today that didn't exist a few years ago? And how do you think inflation plays into that, my friend?
Hmm. Inflation, it's a part of the kind of economy. When you're thinking about patterns, it's just something to factor in. It's not inherently good or bad. And, as an entrepreneur, you're kind of geared to think of what can you control. And you don't really have time to focus on anything else. It's not that, you should or shouldn't. It's just like, hey, you only have 24 hours in a day. You have a team that relies on you. You have investors that rely on you to do the right thing. So like I really don't have time to like, care too much about it, but rather, okay, inflation is a factor. How do we implement, or like how do we factor it in to our projections to rent growth or like, different things, right? So that's how I view it.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the whole notion of modern entrepreneurship. How do you think entrepreneurship has evolved over the years to make it easier for people to carve out a lane to get into becoming an entrepreneur? Because I know that entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, but if you get into it, it can be a lucrative career path. So how do you think entrepreneurship has evolved, my friend.
Mm. I think we've gotten closer to the truth of entrepreneurship. So, over time, you know, society and everything, you get closer to the meta. The meta is just the optimal way of doing something, right? I think just to take one example is like social media. Back 20 years ago, like we didn't really know what we're doing. We're posting cat videos, but now, you have people like Alex Hormozy. He's like, hey, I want to help business owners do this so that I could buy their company. So I'm going to put out helpful business content. That way I build authority and trust. So like when the business owner wants to sell, like I'm the first call that they make. So, you get closer to the meta like that. And in regards to entrepreneurship, it's that you have a more realistic view of the inputs and outputs required to succeed in entrepreneurship. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like it's grueling work if you want to get to where you want to get to. I mean, I've worked 7 days a week consistently for as long as I can remember, when I'm in entrepreneurship, because you eat what you kill, essentially. Like if you don't deliver value to the marketplace, you're not going to get rewarded for it. So, having more truthful conversations about it has been helpful. And, a lot of people listening to podcasts and stuff, maybe they're thinking about going into their own journey of entrepreneurship. You know, they're being encouraged really to have side hustles, right? It's a thing now that you have a side endeavor while holding your real-time job or your full-time job. And I think it's a wonderful way to prove to yourself that you can do entrepreneurship because, hey, like if you can't work 7 days a week, someone else is eating your lunch, right? So you better have really good work ethic. And you can have a 40-hour a week job plus another 20 hours. You have the time.
Yeah. Well, I always say that you make time for the things that you prioritize, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. And, Leo, I know that you've spoken about the idea of affordable housing without being a charity. What does that mean to you in practice? And how can private investors create meaningful social impact while also still delivering on their returns? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. You know, the whole notion of charity, I had a great question about this from another podcast I was on, is like, the whole notion of charity is like, why should we do something, right? The motivation of doing something on the charity side is because I should do it versus the motivation behind doing something in the real world is that it makes sense to do it. So the whole notion of profit with a purpose is that for manufactured housing communities, for mobile home parks, investors are able to get a strong risk adjusted return while also preserving and maintaining affordable housing. I mean, affordable housing is so important because, look, I mean, as you know, like inflation's coming, there's like rising costs and stuff, and like the cost of home ownership and just like living in general is just getting more and more. So the demand for this kind of product is only going to increase. So, you're doing good and also making good.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we split the conversation back to manufactured housing. It's an often overlooked stream of investing for mainstream investors, and that's part of the reason you got into this niche market. But, you know, I, you and I both know that it can be considered one of the most effective ways to, solve this home affordability problem that we have and also provide risk adjusted opportunities for real estate. So, why do you think it's an asset class that remains underrepresented? And what do you think people are missing by not investing in manufactured homes, my friend?
Yeah, I think the secret has gotten somewhat out within the past 5, 10 years. There's been a ton of new interest into the space. So, to call it a secret isn't as accurate anymore. But, for the longest time historically, why people haven't really wanted to delve into it is because of stigma of, just various things that people think of. And if you think about it fundamentally, stigma and preconceived notions, it shrouds the truth. And people seeking the truth to be like, hey, what is this space actually like? Wow, you're actually delivering a good service to the economy. You're not dealing with the worst kind of worst people or something like drug dealers or something, and like you're not taking advantage of like poor people, or there's like preconceived notions out there that gradually falls. I think we can see that, back to pattern recognition just across society, right? Back in the 80s, right? Like being gay was like such a stigma. You're like, oh, like gay people this, gay people that. But like now, like, it's celebrated. Like you should be able to love who you are and like love who you want to, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
over time, we get closer to the meta and closer to the truth. And now we're seeing that in the manufactured housing spaces. People are like, hey, this is pretty practical, and it actually is worth my while. So that's why you'll see people building companies around it, including my company. I'm building entire teams to help me run these properties well, so that we can deliver that housing, we can preserve it, and also help our investors win too.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about building your business in just a second, but I'm also curious to get your thoughts on relationship building. Now, I believe that you are in a unique marketplace to answer this question about relationship building, because when you build manufactured homes, you've got to create a lot of external and internal relationships, my friend, in order for this model to be successful. And I always say that relationship building is the heartbeat of progress in business. So I'm curious about getting your thoughts on the importance of relationship building, particularly in the space that you currently occupy, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, you sort of have this important responsibility of delivering value to the economy. And how do you do that? You need to have a good team running on good systems. And having good people on your team is a core component of it. And it might sound transactional or anything, but like how do you get good people to want to join your team? Right? I learned that firsthand at Tesla, is to have a compelling vision to work towards, because people want purpose. People want to be told what to do. People want to work towards something. They want to get behind something. That's why they support certain things. It's like, hey, let's Mr. Beast, like let's plant 1,000 trees or something. Like I can get behind that. So, having a compelling vision for your team. So being able to set that vision and the trajectory, and also truly like, and this is like hard to fake or something, like from the bottom of your heart wanting what's best for your people. So I say this to like everyone on my team, like what are your goals and how can I help you get there? There is no right or wrong. Like you don't need to be afraid. You don't need to like walk on eggshells on like what you say around me. Like I just want to know the truth, and like I want to help you get there. We all have very limited time here on earth, and like you're choosing to spend it with me and vice versa. So we got to make sure it's a good fit. And like look, if it is, man, like let's rock. I will end with this, that there's an old African proverb that if there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. So that's kind of the culture I build with my team, is that you're going to have an ally that has your back, that wants what's best for you truly, but let's work. It's going to be hard work, and like it's a big goal that we work together. So buckle up, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to ask you about building Cornell communities from this perspective. Many entrepreneurs, they dream about building a business, but few start without mentors or a large network or a proven roadmap. So I'm curious, what were some of the mentors around the way for you and the biggest challenges you faced while growing Cornell communities? And what advice would you give someone trying to build something out of nothing, like you did building your firm from the ground up? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. So two things, two kind of misconceptions to clear. One is that you should not want a mentor. I think in the traditional sense, like I've gotten people reaching out to me because like, I have content out there. I'm sure you do as well. It's just like, hey, what would you do in this case? Like that just shows that, this person hasn't done their homework and they want you to, feed it to them on a silver platter over knowing zero context on their life, their personality, their goals, their resources and stuff. So like you're not going to give good resources to them. So rather than looking for a mentor, be your own mentor. Think to yourself, like, where do you want to go and how do I get there? And the internet is a beautiful thing. You have people that committed their lives to some incredible endeavors that shared their secrets to success. Like me right now, I'm telling you how I kind of built what I built and kind of the mindset shifts and the personal development that I have to go through. So you can just listen to this for free and take what you want from it and make yourself a better person. And that's ultimately how I got here, through reading, through podcasts, social media posts, talking to people, asking for help. That's important as well. And not wasting time of the person that you're asking for help on. People are happy to help you, but just like if you're like, hey, what's a mobile home? You can Google that, my friend. Like don't waste my time, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that you argue that high income professionals often are financially stuck despite earning a significant income, my friend. And I wonder, well, why do you think this happens, and how can passive investing help people create a financial freedom in your view and long-term wealth? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. The analogy is that when you have a job, you have a stream of water. You have a stream of income, right? The tap is on, the water is just going down. And initially you can put your hands together and hey, there you go. You have a handful of water. That's great. You can have some degree of wealth. But if you have the right knowledge and the right tools, then hey, maybe you want to get a bucket and then you have more water. And then you could set that water away for a rainy day that, maybe the spigot is off. Your water is no longer flowing, but you still have water for you and your family. So that's kind of the notion behind investing is like, how do you take cash and turn it into cash flow? And how do you turn it into assets that make money for you while you sleep? And that's the simplicity of investing.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm curious, what questions should entrepreneurs or investors ask themselves before entering this realm of investing as a career, my friend? Because as you and I both know, investing isn't for everyone. So, what questions should people ask themselves before jumping in the investing pool, my friend?
Yeah. So, I think in general, it's test the waters, like dip your toes in. At one point in my life, I was very burn the boats, all or nothing. I was like a very ambitious person and very passionate. But now I'm realizing, the power of just gradually going into something. So, whether it's like entrepreneurship, hey, like prove to yourself that you can hold your daytime job and do something on the side before you go full time, right? Ideally get some results first while you have the safety of a job to see like, hey, is this a good way to deliver value to the economy so I can get paid? And on the investment side too, it's like, hey, like don't bet the farm. Kind of go in, like learn more about it. That's how I did it. I started investing like one deal at a time, and I learned about it. I talked to the people, and I gradually found that like, okay, this is a pretty compelling way to build my wealth. Through limited partner investments. I'm a part owner of an asset that's cash flowing. Hey, like this experienced team will just go out there and make money for me. I think I like that. So, finding out like what amount of my portfolio I want to dedicate to endeavors like that. You kind of learn more as you do things rather than learning everything up front.
Yeah, absolutely. Experience is the best teacher. And before I ask you my last question, I've got two quick questions that I wanted your perspective on. So, as we've mentioned before, you started this endeavor, my friend. You worked for Tesla. And whether you like Elon Musk or if you don't, you have to admire his business acumen, my friend. So, what do you think people can learn from the Tesla model or how Elon runs businesses, taking away everything else that comes with him because it was just minted America's first trillionaire. So I'm curious, what do you think people can learn from him and the Tesla model specifically in order to, upsize investing or entrepreneurship? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting question. And kind of before I get into it too, some people like Elon Musk has gotten somewhat controversial in like more recent years, over his like endeavors and stuff. But to that I say I judge the ability of my baker by his ability to bake, not his taste in cars. I don't care what car he drives. I care what kind of bread that he bakes. So to me, Elon Musk is a brilliant entrepreneur. He's found ways to deliver value in novel ways that the market hasn't seen before. So to me, and look, there's like biographies out there. I'm reading his biography with Walter Isaacson, 95 chapters. So there's a lot on this guy. But the core is that he works like unbelievably hard. He redefines hard work, and I think it was so impactful on me to work for him or like work in his company
Mm-hmm.
at that time, kind of just learning the value of your hard work, right? But then also, he has this famous way of viewing things is the first principles thinking. It's looking at something from the ground up rather than what it is and going down. So, what that is like, hey, what does it take to send something to space? Do we need this thing right here? If it's not grounded in physics, then probably not, right? So, for me, building my company, building Cornell Communities, we kind of view things from the ground up as well. It is important to see, how things are usually done. That way you can kind of shortcut your results to a certain extent. But how do you create your own unique value? How do you kind of redefine things and innovate and make things simpler? It's just start from the ground. That's how we're implementing AI is like, we don't find for like, that secret hack of like, hey, that report to run and stuff. We think simple. It's like, okay, what does AI do? What can we have it do consistently? And we go from there. We start from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because I'm personally interested, you know, Leo, and I know that you've done some research on me. I was born with spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. And at the age of 9, I found out that I couldn't walk for the rest of my life without assistance because of the severity of my disability. And when I graduated college, I went on 10 consecutive job interviews, and nobody would hire me as a sports reporter because at the time they viewed my disability as a liability. So what I did was I turned my story into my message, and now I get paid to talk to employers about the importance of hiring folks with disabilities and the importance of resilient mindsets in workplaces. So I'm curious, how do you think we can get employers to rethink the hiring process and really embrace diversity as a strength and a competitive advantage rather than a liability? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
It takes two thoughts come to mind. One, it really starts from the top down because most change in an organization, it's hard to impact it from the ground up. You certainly can. It's not impossible, but it really has to start from the leadership believing that there is a reason to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And to what I said earlier, the more you can make a solution practical and rather than an obligation, rather than charity, the better. Because people are excited to do it, right? A big reason that, DEI, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, got implemented a lot during COVID is people are like, well, hey, if I'm a brand, if I'm Ralph Lauren, like I want to know how to reach more customers. I want to sell more of my polo shirts. So how do I do that? Maybe I have someone from like African descent. He knows how to tap into the African market. Maybe in our marketing material, like we know how to we know how to speak to our clientele more. So thinking of it in that regards gets them thinking. And there is no shame in being transactional. I think being transactional gets a bad reputation, but the core of it is there is an exchange. I'm offering something that you agree is of value, so you exchange. You exchange, $1,000 for this iPhone you get from the store, right? If you go into an iPhone and like, they're selling iPhones for $10,000, you're gonna be like, no, I'm not buying that. It's not worth it to me. So to make transactions happen is great. So top down, but also bottom up is people like you, Kevin, like you have a platform, you have a voice now. There's social media, the entertainment platforms, like it really democratizes your voice because people vote with their attention now. In addition to their dollars, back in the day, people vote with their dollars, but now it's like if people like what you say, they'll tune in, they'll share it with a friend, they'll tell others about it. So that's what it takes sometimes. And I can't tell you like how many rooms I've been in or like just interactions that I've had, you know, to different people like lenders, investors, like different people. They're like, wow, Leo, like I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, I've seen your stuff online, like I know you're a great person, you're really sincere and like everything like that. And I'm like, hey, that's great. I don't have to show anything to you, and like we kind of shortcut to it. So yeah, I mean, those are the two ways from top down and to the bottom up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leo, my final question for you has to do with your individual, personal, and professional legacy. How do you want that to be defined, and what sort of responsibility do you think entrepreneurs have on a broad spectrum to contribute to the or the societal conversation of change and helping to bridge the divide and bring people closer together? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So I think entrepreneurs, they don't necessarily have a duty, but they get rewarded for the value that they bring. So if if you make something that's compelling, if you're an artist and you make a beautiful artwork, you'll get paid for it. If you're a baker and you can make a mean loaf of bread, you'll get paid for it. So, entrepreneurs, it's like it's the journey of personal development for you to figure out how you can get paid what you're worth. And, I think my legacy in general, like what I want to do with my time is just help people get closer to the truth. I want to help people understand themselves better, see the potential more, and see what opportunities are out there and inspire them to take it because we all have this one life here and it's somewhat limited. We have the tools that we're given. I think it's very important to realize that we're like, when you go to Home Depot, right? There's a million different tools. Some people are, a hammer. Some people are a screwdriver. And like each one of those tools has a function in the overall kind of functioning of society. So, it's not necessarily that you're deficient because of your background or something like that. I think stigma leads us to think this way, but through progress of society, through your own kind of working on your mindset, you kind of get over that. Like for me, like, as an Asian person, like, I've had like my kind of challenges that I had to overcome. And I'm sure it's like similar to you as well with your background too.
Mm-hmm.
So, we all have our challenges that we have to overcome. So why not be supportive of one another and, just go out there and be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I ask you how people can get in contact with you, I do have one final follow up. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on the whole notion of universal basic income. Because, everything's going up these days in the marketplace except for wages, Leo. So I'm curious, when we look at what Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut is proposing, he's proposing a minimum wage hike up to $25. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on the whole notion of universal basic income, the good, the bad, and the in between, my friend. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think broad topics like that, along with like a lot of the other, hot button topics that you see, it's, I think people are asking the wrong question. People are asking for a yes or no, whereas like this is a very complex system with different nuances, different stakeholders, and different applications. Is that, it might make sense for some people in some application, but who really knows, right? I'm no economist, and even economists don't know what's going on, right? Like they can't 100% accurately predict how a policy would impact society. Otherwise, like we would have much like our society would be in a much different place, right? If the policy that we enact has 100% follow through rate on our intention, like society wouldn't be here. But we live in an imperfect world, and I think that's the important part is that hey, I mean, it is a concept. Who knows if it will work or not? We can take it from other countries that have tried it, but also realize that hey, it's a different size country. They have different cultures. How do we know like short term impact, long term impact? What would that be? How would that change how businesses view things? Right. So there's just a lot to consider for and I would say a simple like binary yes or no is not the right question to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complicated question with a number of different answer paths for sure. But Leo, how can people get connected with the Cornell communities or yourself personally if they're so inclined to do so, my friend?
Yeah, so two ways. One, if you want to learn more about my team, Cornell Communities, or about mobile home parks, get on our investor wait list. You can visit us at cornellcommunities.com. That's CornellCommunities.com. Or you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn at Leo Young, LeoYoung, or Instagram at Leo Young Real Estate.
Oh, fantastic, my friend. Well, I think that you're really, innovatively creating a path of least resistance in a good way, my friend, and also creating social impact in the affordable housing conversation. I really want to thank you for your work in the space and for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Kevin. I appreciate the research you've done. And to the listener, I hope you got something out of this. And it's one thing to listen, it's another thing to take action. So I encourage you, what's one takeaway that you can act on that would improve your life today? And just go do it.